All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, cooler heads are prevailing as Florida State, Clemson, and the Atlantic Coast Conference are playing nice with each other. Now, both Florida State and Clemson were separately suing the ACC as they were looking to get out of that grants of rights. And then, of course, the ACC countersuing both Florida State and Clemson as they basically said, hey, we had ourselves an ironclad deal, which was signed by all of our members. And then, of course, the lawyers for the parties. And of course, you know, these guys and gals, they want to take care of business, but at the same time they're charging by the hour. I'm sure some of these schools have some of these attorneys on retainer, but nonetheless they're still getting rich. Okay, but at the end of the day, all of the parties have agreed to settle, and it appears as if it is a win-win for all parties involved. You can glean from it if what you want as far as who won more, but nonetheless the ACC's grants of rights stays in place. However, that exit fee is going to diminish $18 million a year for each school. So let's just say, for an example, if that exit fee right now is 200 million, this time next year it's going to be 182. Okay, and so forth. But nonetheless, also a part of the agreement, more money is going to be distributed to certain schools within the ACC based on viewership. Okay, which is on top of rewarding the schools, in both men's and women's basketball as well as football as to who do better on the playing field. Now, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips has had to really roll up his sleeves, okay, in order to save his league. We've seen recently the ACC bring in SMU, they brought in Cal, and they brought in Stanford. And of course, none of these three schools currently are getting a full taste of the revenue from the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's going to be several years before that happens. But now, this move, okay, to try to keep Florida State and Clemson somewhat happy. It took a lot of work, okay? And it's going to work for now, but I'm not sure if it's going to work long term, all right? But at the end of the day, you look at this because I say somewhat keeping Florida State and Clemson happy because I guarantee you that both of these schools are definitely still going to have their eyes peeled for that next round of talks when it comes to television deals and when it comes down to both the Big Ten and the SEC. Those deals are supposed to expire, I think, roughly around 2030 off the top of my head, but nonetheless, the schools in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're getting more than $50 million per school right now. I guarantee you that number the next time around, when that next TV contract comes around, it's going to be at least 80. Okay. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But Florida State and Clemson might want to go to either the Big Ten or the SEC, but the either one of these two superpowers want them. That's going to be the biggest thing. I mean, you look at it, we've heard about Florida State lobbying to get in the SEC. Florida's basically said no, and they're not the only school. The Big Ten, I really, it's kind of like right now, the Big Ten and the SEC are playing nice. So the Big Ten's really not looking to go into the SEC's backyard per se to poach a Florida State or Clemson unless they really, really had to. Okay, so I'm not holding my breath as far as the Knowles or the Tigers getting out of the SEC, getting out of the ACC right now. Okay, but nonetheless, excuse me, the ramifications of what happened with the settlement are huge because I'm sure that there are some current non-power four schools that are probably looking for an invite from the Big 12 or the ACC as an example. And I'm not sure if it's going to be forthcoming right now, at least definitely not in the near future. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, and I'm going to circle back to this, uh, collegiate athletics really needs to take a break from this constant realignment. And of course, I've talked about this for the longest time. And this is why College football needs a commissioner, so many other things, you name it. But I really think they need to take a step back and a break from this conference realignment because we've got to see how this extended Big Ten, the extended Big 12, and the cross country ACC conferences are going to work out over the long haul. Because right now, you know, non football sports, you've got people complaining, from the Big Ten part as far as the travel goes. Okay. And it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Okay. And at the other, another point for this argument is that these big conferences, uh, like a Big Ten that has 18, like an SEC and a Big 12 that have 16, do they really want to add more freight right now or have another mouth to feed? I think with both the Big Ten and the SEC, they have the luxury of being extremely selective as far as who they want to add. Remember, it took a vote to see whether or not they were going to add USC and UCLA. And of course, part of that, from an outsider's perspective, looking in, is like, you know what? Guess what? Now you get the LA market. And of course, now you got LA, Chicago, and New York, three biggest markets in your back pocket when it comes time to negotiate. And then, of course, once the original Pac 12 folded, if you're the Big Ten, you could have had your pick of the litter and they wanted Oregon and Washington. They could have had Stanford and Cal if they wanted to, but the Big Ten said no. And then, of course, you think about the SEC. They add Texas and Oklahoma, two college football blue bloods. And then you already have a league with the likes of Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Texas A&M. We could just go right down the list as far as a who's who. But at the end of the day, do they really want to have more mouths to feed? And at this point, unless they really, really had to. So, with all of that said, should the schools in the new Pac 12 and the Mountain West glean anything from this decision by the ACC? I think so, because I do truly believe that the next big wave to hit in college football is going to be whenever this Pac 12 media deal is announced. It looks like it's going to be announced at some point before the end of this month. Of course, clearly, the new Pac 12 is not going to get power conference money. Okay, we can totally forget that. But nonetheless, they still do have an opportunity to establish themselves as the top group of five or group of six league in college football as far as money goes. And I think because of that, they could have the potential to attract more schools to basically be the top group of six conference in college football, and it wouldn't even be close as far as second place goes. Also, on top of that, I know that some of those schools, whether it's Pac-12 or Mountain West, holding out hope to get an invite from a Big 12, and I'm really not sure if it's going to happen right now. Maybe somewhere down the line, yes, but definitely not right now. And I'm not even talking about from the TV when the TV deals are up. I'm just saying because I think all of these leagues are sitting back and looking and saying, hey, you know, from the travel aspects, let's see how this works. Let's get a feel out of this. You name it. Brett Yormark, for an example, the commissioner of the Big 12, he wanted to be in multiple markets. He has that. Okay, you have your UCFs, you have your West Virginias, you have your Cincinnati's, you have your TCU's, your Kansases, your BYU's, your Arizona's, your Utah's. Okay, how much more does he want to expand? I'm not sure. Okay, and how much more does that league want to expand? I'm not sure of that either. So I think this has some ramifications for those folks that are in the Pac-12 and Mountain West right now. But at the end of the day, um, I'm not sure if this is going to keep Florida State and Clemson happy long term. They might not have a choice, but I really would like to see uh, more conferences, go to, incentives, if you will, when it comes to pay, because SEC and Big 12 as an example, or Big 10, excuse me, as an example. You got some schools there, football wise, that are not holding up their end of the bargain per se. And I'm just saying they're just cashing in due to the fact that they're in the SEC or the Big Ten. I think it really should be more money allocated to the schools that are carrying respective leagues. And of course, this is what really led to realignment, in the first place. The big waves of it are one of the things that led to realignment about 15 years ago when schools started leaving the Big 12 because they weren't happy with their payouts. But at the end of the day, I truly do believe the more that you do on the athletic, surface or athletic field, to bring more light and bring more attention and do things to prop up your respective league, you should be taken care of by said league. My personal opinion. But nonetheless, I think if you're the ACC, you can breathe a little bit right now because you have some stability. Like I said, I'm not sure how much stability that you're going to have because now, if there are other schools that are not happy, they're going to look to try to get out of there as well. And they could sit back and say, well, if we could just wait this thing out to 2030, that gives us plenty of time between now and then to potentially lobby to get to another league. I truly do think at some point, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but I truly do think at some point we're going to get to a 20 team football conference in college football. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, the Big Ten's basically right there. They're knocking on the door at 18. It's just a matter of whether or not they want to do it. Same thing goes for the SEC and the Big 12. And then, of course, you got the ACC at 17. And, of course, the additions of Clemson and Stanford and Cal, they bring media markets in, but then also the fact that those schools are not taking a full cut as of right now definitely helps out the ACC with the likes of Florida State and Clemson. It's great that all parties involved settled because, of course, if you go to court, you run the risk of having some of your dirty or more or all of your dirty laundry being put out there for the world to see. So, nonetheless, all parties saved face. But for at least for right now, there's a little bit of calm in college football. Okay, and I say college football because at the end of the day, this is what all of this money is based around. But at the end of the day, I think the next wave is going to be that Pac 12 media deal. Clearly, it's not going to affect the Power Four leagues, but I think it's definitely going to affect the group of six, most notably the new Pac 12, the American, and the Mountain West Conference. And then, of course, there's going to be trickle down effects as well. But nonetheless, getting back to the topic at hand, Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC have all reached some peace for right now. But like I said, in the long term, or for the long term, will this keep Florida State and Clemson happy with the ACC? Only time will tell. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.